cartel is a group of independently owned businesses which come together for the purpose of reducing or eliminating competition between themselves so that they can enhance their profit margins or secure their position in the marketplace. And they do this by price fixing. We won't compete on price. Or they divide up geographical markets or products and services. For example, if we were forming a cartel here, I might say, well, I get the north and you get the south. We won't compete. Or I might insist that I get to produce the gizmo, but you can produce the widget. And we won't compete. Or we'll share patents and processes. We won't compete. And every time we agree to eliminate one area of competition between ourselves, we move closer and closer together until finally we are as one industry insofar as the marketplace is concerned, even though our component parts are independently owned. And that is a cartel. And so that enhances our profits. We can get more for our products and services than we could in the arena of free enterprise competition. And of course, the other side of that coin is that the public pays more for those products or services than they would otherwise. And that is just as true in a banking cartel as it is in any other kind of cartel. And the amazing fact emerges that when you study this period, that for the 15 years before the meeting on Jekyll Island, these groupings of which we're speaking had come together increasingly in joint ventures. They were learning how to avoid competition between themselves. They knew they couldn't knock each other out. They had tried that. It was too costly. Now it was time to come together. And what happened on Jekyll Island is that they formed a banking cartel, and they called it the Federal Reserve System. An amazing fact that all these years we've had something which most people have thought was a government operation of some kind or another. We were told it was a creation to protect the people, to stabilize the economy, and it's a cartel. Let's find out why the government is in this partnership, and then we'll find out why the banking cartel is in it. And in order to find out what the payoff is, we'll have to examine how the Federal Reserve System creates money, because that's the key. Now, the Fed has been waiting for them. That's one of the reasons it was created. They walk in there, and the Federal Reserve officer opens up his desk drawer, pulls out a big checkbook, and he writes a check to the United States Treasury for $1 billion and hands it to them. Now we need to stop and ask a question. Where did they get that money? That $1 billion, that's a lot of money. Who put the money into that account for the Federal Reserve so they could give it to Congress or to the Treasury? And the answer is, there is no money there. There's absolutely zero. There's just a checkbook. Well, if you and I were to do that, we would go to jail. But they can do it because Congress wants them to do it. This, in fact, is the payoff. This is the benefit to the government for being in the partnership. The government can go to the Federal Reserve and obtain instant amounts of any amount of money they want without having to confront the taxpayer and say, we're going to raise your taxes for this money directly. It would be very unpopular if Congress had to go to the public and say, you know, we have a lot of money we want to take from you folks, and it's going to cost you $3,000 per family more than it did last year. Now let's see where the banking cartel benefits from this partnership. We'll go back to that $1 billion check and follow it. The Treasury official deposits it into the checking account of the federal government. And immediately all the computers start to whir and the ledgers show that the government now has $1 billion deposit, $1 billion in its account, and so therefore it can write checks up to $1 billion. Government checks start flowing. Let's just follow a $100 check. Make this real simple to the fellow that delivers our mail. The postal worker gets a $100 check. And he looks at this and he can't imagine in his wildest dreams that just 2 days ago that money didn't exist anywhere in the universe. but it's a government check now, and it's very spendable. So he takes it and deposits it into his private checking account at the local commercial bank. Now this money is out of the Federal Reserve mechanism per se, out of the government side of the partnership, and it gets into the private banking side of the partnership. $100 has been deposited. Now the action heats up. The banker looks at that and he goes over to the loan window and he opens it up and he says, "Attention everybody, we have money to loan." And that's good news for a lot of people, because that's one of the reasons we go to the bank, isn't it? To borrow money. So it's good news when there's money available. And the banker says, "We have $100 deposited, but don't worry folks, we can loan you more than that. We can loan you up to $900. Well, how? How can you loan out up to $900 when you only have $100 deposited? Well, it's not difficult if you're in the Federal Reserve System. Here's how it works. The Federal Reserve says that the member banks must keep no less than 10% of their deposits in reserve. So there's $100. They keep 10% in reserve, $10. And they can loan up to $90, right? So we loan it to you, ma'am. You borrowed $90. What do you do with it? Well, you want to spend it. So you want to write a check on it. You've deposited into your checking account so you can write a check. In many cases, it might be put directly into your checking account. But now there's $90 deposit, in addition to the $100 that was deposited to start this chain. Now we've got the $90 that was loaned as another deposit. Well, the Federal Reserve says that you only have to keep 10%, so we keep 10% of the 90 and loan the other 90%, and the person that borrows that puts it right back into the bank as another deposit. Well, the Federal Reserve says you only have to keep 10%, so you know, this goes around and around and around to the revolving door until finally the whole action is played out. And the bottom line is, when that $100 deposit comes in from the postal worker, the banks in essence can loan up to $900 because $100 is the reserve, and that's 10% of 1,000, so they can loan the balance or the difference, which is $900. Now where does that money come from? Well, same place. It springs into being precisely at the point where the loan is made. It didn't exist before, anywhere. Now notice the important thing here. The money that's created out of nothing and given to the government spends for its purposes. But the money that's created out of nothing by the banks is not spent by the banks, it's loaned by the banks to you and to me, and we pay interest on it. Not too shabby. Interest on nothing. I wish I had a magic checkbook like that, where I didn't have to have any money, just a checkbook. And I could write checks, $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 all day long and loan them to you folks, and you pay me interest on it. You see? Not too shabby at all. This, in fact, is the payoff to the commercial banks in the cartel. This scam has become legitimized by law, and we're told it's a wonderful thing.